Good morning, Anil Lal sir and participants. Uh, we are in third day of our faculty development program on CFD, and today morning we have an eminent professor from Kerala's prestigious engineering college of Engineering, Trivandrum, Dr. Anil Lal S. He did his BTech from University of Kerala in the year of 1987, and he had successfully completed a 1-year orientation training in nuclear science and engineering at training school BARC, and MTech in turbo machines from IIT Madras, and PhD area is turbo machines, and it's also from IIT Madras, and uh, he have he has over 100 national and international journal papers, and many students had completed their PhD under his guidance. So, sir, please take over the session.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Shall I start? Yeah. Yeah, today's talk, I will be speaking on finite volume method for computational fluid dynamics applications. As you know, finite volume method So finite volume method is a numerical method for solving physical problems. So physical problems. Okay, one of the physical problem we deal is on fluid mechanics. So for fluid mechanics, there is a clear mathematical model which we call it as the Navier-Stokes equations. Okay, and also there are other physical problems, also structures, things like that. So wherein the mathematical form is a differential equation. So finite volume method is one method for solving the governing equations or differential equations of fluid mechanics, and also for or on similar uh, uh, other physical phenomena or physical problems. And also, there are other methods also, numerical methods for solving differential equation. So why we go for numerical methods is that these differential equations are very difficult to solve mathematically or analytically. The analytical solutions are not possible. So it is impossible to construct analytical solutions to the most of these physical problems, and we get analytical solutions only for those cases wherein we simplify to a great extent. In fluid mechanics, then we can find analytical solutions for a developed flow in which there is only one component of velocity, like that. So okay, most of the time, if it is an ordinary differential equation, even all ordinary differential equations cannot be analytically solved, but certain ODEs you can solve. For certain ODEs you may need series solutions, or certain ODEs you may not find solutions also, analytical solutions also. One particular solution, the Blaisius solution, we cannot have a closed form solution for a Blaisius function. Blaisius function for the flat plate boundary itself, if you take, So there we are able to write an ODE like f triple dash plus half of f double dash is equal to 0. This is an ODE for the flat plate boundary layer, and this is derived by Blasius. But actually, you cannot have a closed form. You cannot have a closed form analytic solution for this problem because this is non-linear. So the Blasius has first derived a series solution for this flat plate. So like that, for such simple flow situations, we need numerical solutions, and the Binetonian method is one method for solving the differential equations. Okay, if I say like that, okay, there is one difference is there. As far as Binetonian method is concerned, you cannot always say that it's a method for differential equation. Suppose you are physically modeling, you consider the case of a heat conduction. Consider the case of heat conduction. You are modeling heat conduction through a solid. Just consider that. So let this be a solid, and this is a solid material inside. Outside, some heat is going into this, and there is a heat flux. That you can find out the heat flux at any point. You can find out on the boundary points. What is the heat flux? You can find out on the boundary points as the normal temperature gradient. What is the normal temperature gradient? Temperature gradient is del T. This is called a temperature gradient. Temperature gradient. So every point you can have a temperature gradient, and the wall is the surface. If you take the del T will be in this direction. Could be some arbitrary direction. Del T. This is del T. That is the gradient of temperature. Could be in some arbitrary direction, but the normal component of del T will causes heat to flow outside. So we take this surface, a small surface area ds, and a unit normal n. So this del T dot n will be the component of del T along the normal direction. This is responsible for heat to flow out. So this into K, as per Fourier law heat conduction, K into del T dot n gives the rate at which heat is flowing out from ds. Rate at which heat is flowing out from ds is given by K del T dot n. So this is the rate at which heat is flowing out from ds, which is on the surface. So like that, the surfaces consist of very small ds's. The total rate of heat is you write it as K del T dot n ds. So the total integral will give you the total heat rate of loss of heat. So rate of loss of heat. So from the surface. So this rate of loss of heat from the surface will be responsible for reduction of the temperature. Okay, by Fourier law heat conduction, this is minus del. So there is a minus sign. So this causes a reduction of heat at a particular rate. The heat will be reducing, and if you take a small dV within the solid, you take a small dV. So the rho into dV is the mass of that, mass into Cp into the rate of temperature loss dot T by dot T. Rate of heat loss, mCp dt delta T by delta T, and when delta T tending to 0, you get it as rho dV Cp dt by dt. dot T by dot T. So this is the rate of loss of heat from this small volume. So like that, if you integrate over the entire volume, you will get the total rate of loss of. So that much reduction of temperature will be there. So this is going to be rho Cp dot T by dot T dV, and this is corresponding to loss of temperature, and this loss of heat, and that and this minus will give you plus. So that way you write one equation like this. You write this equation as integral over V. Okay. If you take rho Cp as a constant outside, dot T by dot T dV is equal to integral over the surface K del T dot N ds. This way you write. So this is how you write the conservation of energy balance. The rate of heat going through the surface is causing a temperature drop at a particular rate, and that is given by this. And out of which this right hand side is a surface integral. So what we normally do is we apply Gauss divergence theorem and convert this into, so this is the vector, and you write del dot of that vector. That is the equation. Del dot of that vector, dot and will not be there, so it becomes dv. So this is the kind of thing. So ultimately we write this as integral over the volume dot T by dot T dV is equal to, of this K is also constant, not spatially varying. If we can take outside, we write K by rho Cp del dot del T dV. So this is called as the thermal diffusivity alpha. So I write like this. So okay. So as far as a finite volume method, so why I wanted to do this exercise is that as far as finite volume method is concerned, we don't need a differential equation. So the finite volume method can start from this step, the volume integral equation. So if you are starting with the differential equation, you will be doing this particular step to write this. So if you are physically modeling the problem for numerical solution, you don't need not go for the actual differential equation if you are trying to solve it by using finite volume method. So for this particular problem, at least, okay, or any problem, fluid mechanics problem also, you don't have to write down the differential equations. You can write the okay. This is an equation that is satisfied on any arbitrary volume of the solid. So if the total solid is like this, so this equation will be applicable for this volume and this volume. Okay, it can be applicable for this volume, like that. Only thing is that you have to do the volume integration. So this volume integration you have to do, this volume integration you have to do. So that way you need not also say that the finite volume method is a method for solving solving differential equations. So you can say that solving the integral conservation equations of any physical phenomena like heat transfer, fluid mechanics, etc. So that is another kind of interpretation of the finite volume method. So if you are using starting with a differential equation, suppose a mathematical problem is given to you and asked you to do by using finite volume method, then you will do a step. So that is called if it is a physical problem, that is called you will do some kind of volume average, right? Okay, and that will give you this one. So as I said, so this particular integral conservation equation is applicable for any volume, any size of the volume. It could be the full solid, it could be small. So in finite volume method, what we basically do is we divide the computational region or a computational domain. It could be something a volume for 3D. It could be something you defined on a plane for 2D. It could be a 1D. So whatever it is, you divide that domain. So for the sake of simplicity, let me take a two-dimensional plane. Something, some. Yeah, wait a minute. Somehow the broadcasting got stopped. Let me have a checking. Yeah, yeah, please wait for a minute. Okay, okay. Sorry for the. Uh, okay, so so what we do is for a 2D, suppose it is a rectangular region, you divide this into divide this into cells like this. So this is one unit is called a finitolium cell. So if you take the finitolium cell, it will be something like this. So one cell will be like that. So this is the centroid of that cell. So this is called a finitolium cell. We integrate this. Okay, we perform this doing the conservation of the integral conservation of the physical quantity. Here it is a heat, but during this formulation it has come to this alpha and all. Now we are writing on a particular temperature, particular variable temperature. So this is actually conservation of heat only, but now it in terms of the variation of temperature. So what we do is this integration is performed will be performed on the finitolium cell. So this as such this integration can be done to any sized volume, any sized volume. That way the whole domain, whole or the whole it can be integrated over the whole domain. Then it is called the integral conservation of the whole domain. So the conservation can be applied to any arbitrary sized volume. And if we are applying it to an infinitesimally small volume, then it becomes a differential equation. So infinitesimally small volume is like a point. So if we apply this for an infinitesimally small volume, you will land up to the differential equation. Whereas in this particular case, we are having a finite sized. So in finite volume method, the computational domain is divided into small volumes like this. It could be actually one of the advantages of finite volume method is that you can have the cells of any shape. Only thing is that you must be able to you must be able to um, we must be able to okay we must be able to do it. We must be able to do the integrals over the surface of the control volume. So sorry, I made a mistake while talking. So actually, okay, this is a step you do if you are going for developing the differential equation. So as such for finite volume method, you don't even do this. You don't even do this particular step. This particular step is also not done. So what we actually do is we only write this equation, and from there you can proceed and work out the discretization equation. Even this is also a step that is required when you want to develop a differential equation. If you don't want to formulate a differential equation and straight away do the finite volume method, you can do with this one, this particular equation. So wherein we are only just doing the heat balance between through the what is the heat rate of heat leaving the boundary, and what is the rate of heat leaving the boundary, and what is that cases to the temperature of any particular cell, any particular point, and integral over that volume that is given by this. So for finite volume method, our step is we do with this one. We don't even do further integral, making this Gauss divergence theorem is also not done. So this is what we do. So in finite volume. So and also okay, this is one way of doing the finite volume method directly from the conservation. Suppose somebody has given you a differential equation, like for the corresponding differential equation for this is dou t by dou t is equal to alpha into dou squared del squared t, del dot del t. So this is a differential equation. So this is somebody has done the further steps and done this derivation and given you this one. This is how you are having the Navier-Stokes equation also. Then what you do is, if a differential equation is given to apply finite volume method, what you do is you take the average. Actually, this is applicable for each and every point. A differential equation is an equation or conservation equation applicable for each and every point. Or point-wise equations are called a differential equation. So if such a differential equation is given, then what we do is we find out the average value of this. How do you find out the average value of this? So different points on this the finite volume has a different dou t by dou t. So this point has a dou t by dou t. This point may have a dou t by dou t. This point may have a dou t by dou t, etc. So what we do is you go to a point, take a small dv, and then to find out average, what you do is that is area weighted average or volume weighted average. What you do is dou t by dou t dv, the integral over the volume. This is that is how we do an average. So then what you have to do is you have to divide it by volume. This is a volume average. So the volume averaging of this first top is 1 by v dou t by dou t dv. So we are volume averaging whatever temperature variation with respect to time are there, and that derivative is volume averaged over a finite volume cell. So similarly, this side we are having again the alpha is a constant. We can take it as outside constant. So I'll find 1 by v in the integral over the volume del dot del t dv. So that is also volume average. So this del dot del t is also volume average, or this is also called del squared t. It's also volume average. So this volume and this volume goes. So what we do is we are having integral over volume dou t by dou t dv is equal to alpha into, this is a volume integral. So you convert this into a surface integral. So this is del dot of this, that is the vector is del t. So the reverse is del t dot n ds. So actually, when the differential equation is given, you volume average. The fundamental operation you do in finite volume method is you volume average the equation over the finite volume under conservation. You volume average it. When you volume average it, you also whenever you are having some del dot of some f dv is there, what you do is f dot n ds. So integral over this is integral of, this is called, so the Gauss divergence theorem is basically, whenever in a differential equation you are having some del dot of a vector and the volume integral of that is there. This is called del dot of a vector, volume integral of that is equal to integral over the surface of the volume f dot n ds. This is what is called the Gauss divergence theorem. So you apply Gauss divergence theorem, etc. So if you are physically formulating the mathematical form of a physical problem, if you are mathematically formulating a physical problem, when you write the conservation, at that time itself you will get an equation. From there you can start developing your finite volume discretization. So that is what is the advantage of finite volume method also. Finite volume method shows the integral conservation of the physical quantity under conservation. So basically this is the integral conservation of the physical quantity under conservation on a finite volume, and that is finite volume. That is, it is having a finite size. So now what is the problem is that when you do that integral conservation on a typical size, the finite volume is what will happen. So like this averaging, so everything, all variations within the finite volume will be averaged out. That is the problem. So if you take a large size the finite volume, then you will not be able to see what is the variation within the control volume happening. You don't know because you are volume average. So that is why we are only averaging a larger volume, because of our computational resource problem. If you are having a very high performance computer which is capable of very small cells or large number of cells, so then what you do, you will be doing it on a very small. Okay, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 into something, 7 into 2, 3, 4, 7 into 4. Okay, this is a very coarse grid as far as finite volume method is concerned. For heat conduction problems, this kind of, because mostly the temperature will be varying in somewhat smooth manner. So maybe in such cases, a grid of 100 by 100, etc., may be okay for getting a reasonable good solution. Whereas if you are doing the solution of Navier-Stokes situation, now you know Navier-Stokes situation can solve both laminar and turbulent flow. So for laminar flow, turbulent flow, and transition, everything, the mathematical formulation is Navier-Stokes equation. So when you are attempting a particular problem, whether you are able to solve the physical situation, it depends upon the size of the finite volume. If your size of the finite volume is large, big, then what is happening is that fundamentally what we are doing, we are volume averaging. That is, everything will be averaged out. So an averaged out value only will be coming. So that way, what is the problem? Suppose you are doing a fluid mechanics problem involving turbulence. The turbulence eddies are there. There are eddies in turbulent flow. So when there are eddies and if your finite volume cells is larger than maybe most of the time, what we will be attempting by using our available computer resources, that we will be attempting to solve on a grid which may be 1,000 times larger than the smallest size eddy. Then what will happen? The smallest size eddy is 1 by 1,000 of that. Similarly, what will be happening? 1,000 eddies at least would have got averaged out in a finite volume, and you will be getting an average value. And then there is some problems also with the numerical method. There are some stability problems. If you are attempting to average out too many eddies, so that way you are not you are not trying to capture completely what physically happened. So then there is a problem arises based on stability. You will not be able to get a solution also. Some countries, because these are non-linear problems, when you are attempting to solve on a coarser grid, when the physical phenomena consist of much smaller sized scales, we are trying to resolve much smaller sized where much smaller sized scales are present, and we are not trying to solve. We are not trying to capture. Then the solution itself will not become possible. It will not be. So So that is the reason why when you are trying to simulate turbulent flows, you have to go for very, very, very fine grids. So fine grids to capture one size. So the size of the minimum size of the FD, at least you have to consider as the size of the control volume. Then only you will be able to solve for turbulent flow. Whereas laminar flow, you can do solution of laminar flow on a reasonable grid of 100 by 100, etc. Why? Because there are no such scales are there. The phenomena, flow phenomena does not contain any small scales, and only the some kind of some phenomena is there, and that can be okay. You have to consider a grid that can show, that can provide a reasonably accurate variation of the physical quantity. So if you don't provide that, then the variation will be slightly up. So that is why in laminar flow, we do with a 100 by grid and get a variation. If you have a comparison, okay, then what you do, if you do with a 200 by 200 also. Then also let us see the comparison between the variations with 100 by 100 and 200 by 100, 200 by 200. If they are not too much different, then we will say that whatever 100 by 100 grid, the solution given provided by 100 by 100 grid is reasonably accurate and can be accepted, and you will do all the cases on a 100 by 100. So all these processes are doing finite volume like this on problems is possible with the laminar flows. But when it goes to turbulent flows, you have to have the averaging. Whenever you do the averaging, you have to do averaging on the very fine control. So, so so basically, you do some kind of an average. So from mathematical point of view, differential equation you take, you volume average, or you find out an average, and perform one of the volume averages you perform by doing Gauss divergence theorem and evaluating it by surface integral. So whereas in the formulation we get into this itself. So let me write down once again, integral over, this is the equation we are solving. Dot t by dot t dv is equal to some alpha into integral over the surface del t dot n ds. So this is our integral conservation equation. This we obtain in a mathematical problem. You obtain this by doing volume averaging and doing further steps. When you are formulating for the problem directly, you get into this kind of an equation and you solve that by using finite volume. So for this problem, I will today's class I will just show how we can solve this by finite volume method, and finite volume method we can do. Okay, first of all, let me explain this for a one-dimensional problem. I will not go for a bigger problem because I want to make show some how you solve the equation also, discretization equation also. So let me take a one-dimensional problem. So one-dimensional problem is something like this. So there is a rod, maybe it could be some plate also. Okay. This side is insulated. This side is insulated. These two sides are insulated. So thereby the heat flow is only in this direction. So if this is the x direction, the heat flow is only in the x direction. So the variations of temperature are there only in the x direction. And this way there is not, this is insulated. So that way, since the temperature variations are only along a line, the discretization means dividing. Discretization means am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Am I
sir.
audible? Can anyone respond?
Yes, sir. Audible, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Since this is a one-dimensional problem, your domain is, yeah. What we do is we divide this line like this. So for 1D it is like that. For any numerical method it is like that. So and you can say that this length, this strip is a finite. Each strip is a finite. So maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6. That way.
Sir, your mic is muted.
Okay, just muted. Okay, it got muted, I don't know. So,
Yes.
so this is a finite volume. This is a finite volume. So these are these I and I plus 1 are the boundary points. So maybe there is an I plus 2 over here. This is okay. Okay, I will not put the I and I plus 1. I will number okay, finite volume method. I will do like this. Let me consider, and this is the finite volume, and this is a one second. I have a problem with my sharing the screen.
Hello, sir. Anilal, sir.
Is it there? Presentation is there. Presentation is visible. Stop broadcast.
Hello, sir. Your screen is not visible now.
Yeah, screen will come. It's just I'm trying something. Remember. Eh? Eh? Yeah. Ah. No. The problem. മോന്റെ മറ്റേ ഇതിനകത്ത് കിട്ടുന്നില്ല ഇതിനകത്ത് So is it audible now?
Yes, sir.
Is it visible? It is visible. Okay. Okay. So basically, what we do is we have a domain or the form of a line. So we have a points. We have points on this. Points like this. So these are the divisions. Between two dots, what is there between two dots is a finite volume. That is because it is a line, 1D it is a line. Otherwise, it will be an area for 2D or it would be a real volume for 3D. So the volume will come only for 3D. But basically, you can imagine that this itself is a volume because this line is having some area, and we are talking about the volume between the points which are shown by the surface. So that is a finite volume. So now I will be explaining what is a self-centered finite volume method, in which what we do is we consider the center point as the control point, and we will be trying to make a solution for the value of the unknown at P. And thereby you have this is a neighboring control volume. This is another neighboring control volume. So the midpoint of that is this is lying on the east side. I will mark it as capital E, and this one I will mark it as west side point, capital W. So that way we have a P for the center of the control volume under consideration, and W and E for the cell centers of the adjacent control volumes. And maybe depending upon the finite difference scheme you use, you may need sometimes you may need further points also sometimes, but you will see what we are going to do. So this is the center point is marked as P. Maybe then these circles are the boundaries of the control volume, the finite volume. So that I mark it as small e and small w. So this is how this is how it is. Now that we are having the integral over the volume, dot t by dot t dv is equal to alpha into integral over the surface del dot del t dot n ds. That is the surface, the boundary surface. So this right hand side is integration over the boundary surface. As far as this volume is concerned, it has the boundary surfaces which are this surface and this surface. So this endpoints. These boundaries are W and E, because we have earlier assumed that if this is a rod kind of a finite volume with the W here and E here, and middle we are having WP. So this periphery is insulated. So that way there is no surface here. This is a surface. This is a there is a surface area here. So what is surface area at E? So E there is a surface area E. So ds will be substituted by AE, and for this surface E and this surface W. So this integral over the surface becomes integral over the E, and the summation of integral over C and the summation of integral over W. So that way you write it as del t dot n. Dot n means the outward normal to E is plus I unit vector I. So del t is del t is dot t by dou x I plus dot t by dou y j plus dot t by dou z k. That this is what is del t. And del t dot at E we are having at t n is equal to I. So del t dot I becomes dot t by dou x. So and also we need the surface area. Surface area is del T dot N into ds. ds is AE, so that becomes AE. So this is over the side, over the surface E. So over the surface E, we are having dot T by dot X into AE, the area at E. And now we are having this. This S consists of this S is a union of the surface E and surface W. So when it comes to W, we are having similarly AW is there, del T is there, and their outward normal is minus I. Outward normal at W is minus I. So it becomes minus dot T by dot X in the AW. So that becomes minus dot T by dot X AW, and this derivative we have to evaluate at W here, and this derivative you have to evaluate at E here. So the right hand side becomes the right hand side becomes alpha. So the alpha is now, it is there treated as a constant. Maybe if you want to keep alpha inside, also you can keep alpha inside. Thereby you can consider the variation of alpha also, alpha at E and alpha at W also. So that way, if you are doing this, alpha will come inside as alpha E here and for alpha W here. So for the sake of simplicity, let us have alpha outside. We are having dot T by dot X at E AE minus dot T by dot X at W AW. And this is what is a spatial discretization of the right hand side. Coming to left hand side, what we can do is so what basically we do in finite volume method, we consider an average value for dot T by dot X over the entire volume. So let us have it as an average value of that is an average value. That average value can be taken as the value at P itself. That is at P. So dot T by dot T at P multiplied by volume. What is volume? Volume is the total. Okay, volume is you have to suppose some area variation is there, AE and AW. That area variation you have to integrate over the length to find out what is volume. For time being, if you assume that the area is constant, then you can write it as area into length. So that way, this you will not have a differentiation of E and W. So that way it becomes, if that kind of a simplification, the area is also constant, area cross section of the finite volume is constant, then we have like this. So then this EMA cancels also. So we have some kind of a simplified equation of this form, wherein dot T by dot T at P is also there. That is a time derivative. So then it depends on how you resolve this time derivative. Time derivative for the finite volume method. So for doing that, you want to know how the temperature at P varies. You must have an approximation of how temperature at P varies with time. So with time. So we okay. Suppose we are going from time is equal to some nth level to n plus 1th level time. That is we are at a time level and time levels are from the initial guess is at 0, 1, 2. These are time steps. So we are at an nth time step and then going to n plus 1th time step. This is the time, it varies time. This is about time. So if we are considering time like this, we are having the initial guess, first time level, second time step, third time step, nth time step. And when we are proceeding from nth time level to n plus 1 the time level, how the temperature at point how at the temperature at point P varies. So for that, we can have different approximations for the time variation of temperature at any point. So that gives you schemes called explicit schemes. implicit schemes, and then some mixer scheme like Crank-Nicolson scheme. So that is with respect to the time variation. So, so this is a time, and I am in the n into delta t, n into time step delta t is going to n plus 1 into delta t. That is the time duration of the current time step from nth time level to n plus 1 time level. And we are having temperature on the temperature. This is the variation of temperature at P. So if you are at the nth time level, you know what is the temperature at P at the nth time level. And we are proceeding to n plus 1 the time level. Okay, n plus 1 the time level. The temperature at n plus 1 the time level will be Tp n plus 1. It may be higher or low depending upon the case. So anyway, some Tp n plus 1 will be there. So within the time step, it will be varying from Tpn to Tpn plus 1, whatever value it is. So we need to have some kind of an approximation how it varies within the time level. So it could be a straight line variation. That is one finite difference approximation you can have, and one approximation you can have. One approximation you can have is a straight line variation. Another approximation could be for as we just enters the time step from Tpn, immediately it rises and takes on the value within the time level. It will be almost so this is straight line. There can be a variation like this, like that. So this is an extreme kind of variation. So this extreme kind of variation is talking, what it is talking is, what is specifying is that as soon as you enter the time step, it picks up the end time level value. So this is called an implicit scheme. Why it is called an implicit scheme, I will tell you. And you can also assume that for most of the time, the most of the portion of the time step, the value remains as Tpn and so we can have all these kinds of variation possible. This is one thing we may consider for the numerical solution. This is another one extreme, and this is another extreme. This is called explicit. So for the numerical integration, we either adopt explicit, implicit, or the straight line variation is called a Crank-Nicolson scheme. This is called a Crank-Nicolson scheme. So if once we have that, we can approximate the time derivative. So what approximation you take? Suppose I am taking explicit. Explicit scheme. So then what it is happening is that explicit scheme, if I am taking, what is happening is that we take then the forward differencing for time, dou t by dou t, we take it as a t at n plus 1 minus t at n by delta. This is same for all the schemes. T at n plus 1 minus t at n by delta t. But since in explicit scheme, almost the entire time step, the Tp at n and the temperature values at other points also remains as the Tp at nth time level value. So what we can do is for evaluating this, For evaluating this, this temperature gradient you can evaluate at the nth time level, because all the temperature gradient you can evaluate at the nth time level when you are using the explicit scheme. So for the explicit scheme, it will come as Tn plus 1 minus Tn by delta t is equal to alpha dou t by dou x at nth time level minus dou p by dou x at nth time level at w and this is at t. So this is how you are discretizing for an explicit scheme. If it is an implicit scheme, what you have to do is this one, the forward difference in time will be there, and this will be n plus 1, and this will be n plus 1. That makes it is as implicit. Okay. So this is explicit and this is implicit. Okay. So for the implicit scheme, we'll have this kind of a structure for the discretization equation. So now, okay, now we have the finite difference in time. We have a finite difference in time. We have done the finite difference forward difference approximation for the time, and then we are having the gradients. We are having the gradients. So basically, this step what we write is based on what is called the Taylor series expansion. We use a Taylor series expansion for writing this. So and this is at the point P. So the forward series forward series approximation from the Taylor series expansion, approximate Taylor series expansion is what is given by this. The order of accuracy of this can be seen as order of delta t. So we can have a higher order accurate solution also. Maybe I won't go to the details of that because of the lack of time. So now let us come to this. This is a spatial derivative. Dou t by dou x. So dou t by dou x. I'm having something called this is a point E, and this is a point W. This is a point P, and the right side I'm having here I'm having an E of that is corresponding to P. This is an adjacent point cell center. So here I'm having W, capital W. This is small w. That is the boundary. And now I want to find out dou t by dou x at t at this particular point. So and suppose we know that point the temperature at point P is known, temperature at point E is known. So we want to find out dou t by dou x at t. So I will now write down the Taylor series expansion and try to write what is dou t by dou x at t. And then suppose this is the point E. And at some x, and we are having some other point E is there at a certain x later, certain x certain positive x, certain higher value of x. So suppose I want to write suppose I want to write phi. Suppose I want to write the value of phi capital E. Phi capital E is there from phi small e. So phi capital E is equal to, so that is f of x plus some delta x is equal to f of x plus delta x by 1 factorial f dash x plus delta x squared by 2 factorial f double dash x plus etc. So I am writing phi at E is equal to phi at small e plus delta x by 1 factorial, or 1 factorial we need to have and dt by dx at E, dt by dx at the point D plus delta x squared by 2 factorial d squared t by dx squared at E plus etc. So this is the kind of thing, this is called Taylor series expansion. This is a forward Taylor series expansion, wherein phi E is used to find out phi capital. So that is a forward series, that is we are writing for a higher value of E, wherein delta x is positive. And suppose if I want to write phi p, then phi E, from E we can write for phi p also. So the difference is that the delta x is negative. dt by dx at E plus delta x squared by 2 factorial d squared t by dx squared at E
this will be plus because that square is there. Maybe delta s cube by 3 factorial d cube t by dx cube at e. Here also delta s cube by 3 factorial d cube x by d cube t by dx cube at e, like that. And okay. So what we do is okay, we can either use, this is called forward series expansion, wherein we can write out delta dot t by dou x at d. But for that, suppose I want to evaluate this, I need this one also. Now suppose if I use these two things together, this forward difference and backward difference together, and if we write a subtraction of these two, phi e minus phi p would give you, this will cancel, and this will add up 2 delta x dt by dx at e, and this will subtract, and something order of delta x cube will be there. And so we can write dt by dx at e as phi e minus phi p by 2 delta x. 1 delta x will be cancelling here, order of delta x squared. So we use a forward Taylor series expansion and backward Taylor series expansion to write. We are able to write dou t by dou x at e. So this some kind of a manipulation of Taylor series expansion is used for deriving for finding out the gradients, for approximating the gradients of whatever level of accuracy you need. So when I did this this forward series and backward series together, and I'm subtracting that and writing this, I can see that the truncated term is the leading term, which is truncated, is having a degree 2, and we numerical method we call this as the term neglected is of the order of delta x squared. So this is an order of accuracy, second order accuracy. We call it a second order accuracy. And the physical meaning are in practice, practically what we get based on a second order accuracy scheme is that if you are dividing the grid, suppose you are having a grid size delta x for the numerical calculation. If you have another grid with the delta x by 2 as the size, then the accuracy of the solution will be increased to 4 times. So reduction of size to half gives an accuracy improvement of 4 times accuracy improvement. If you calculate the error of the numerical solution on a standard problem for which you know the numerical solution and analytical solution, that comparing that, you will get an error, and that error would be 1/4. By reduction of grid by half, the reduction in the error will be 1/4. That is called a second order accurate. So, suppose instead of this, if you are using a first order accurate mathematical approximation for the numerical solution, then reducing by half will only reduce the error by half. So like that, if you go on doing a third order accurate scheme, the error would be reduced to 1/9, like that. So the error will be reduced to 2 cube. That is 2 squared. 2 okay, it will be reduced to 1/9. If it is a fourth order accurate, the error will be reduced to 1/16. By reducing the mesh size to half, the error will be reduced to 1/16. So that is the advantage. So the people devise methods by which they go for different accurate approximations for the numerical solution. So this I am illustrating a second order accurate numerical solution for this particular problem. So and this we are doing at n+1 time level. So this will be n+1. This will be n+1. So like that, when you write down this again, I will write down here. We are having Tn+1 minus Tn by delta t is equal to alpha into. I'm having here now temperature at E. So this is at P. This is at P. This is at n+1 the time level, minus Tp at n+1 the time level by 2 into delta x. 2 into delta x. Minus the left hand side, I'm having dou t by dou x at W. That becomes Tp n+1 minus TWN plus 1 by 2 delta x. So this way you get. So we this is for one dimension. So for 2D it will be having some more terms, some more contributions will be there. For 1D what we are having some dependence on capital E, dependence on capital E and capital W. For 2D you may have a dependence on a point on the north side and south side. For 3D you will have a dependence on some more terms. So that goes like that. Now basically what is discretization equation is an equation you write for an equation for the temperature at P in terms of temperature at capital E and capital W. So this is not small e, this is not small e, this is not small e, this is capital E, this is capital E, this is capital E, this is capital E. So discretization equation is an equation connecting the temperature values or the variable values at the selected points. The points are selected based on the grid. So we are for this numerical method, we are having the adjacent points capital E, the temperature at E, temperature at W, and temperature at P are related through this manner. So let us write what is the TPN plus 1. TPN plus 1, I'm having a coefficient 1 by delta T over here. So there is a minus is there. That minus comes here. On the left hand side, it becomes positive. So say TPN plus 1 is there. So plus 1 by 2 delta x. And here also there's a TP is there. That is also minus. That comes here going to 1 by 2 delta x. So this set is equal to alpha into, and now that is TPN plus 1 is the value which we are going to find out, and then T is there. So I'm having T n plus 1 by 2 delta x, and this minus will become plus TWN plus 1 by 2 delta x is there. And there is a TPN is there that comes here, TPN by delta T. So this kind of an equation you get. This is an unknown, and TPN plus 1 is related to TN plus 1 which is unknown, TWN plus 1 which is also unknown. So this is actually we are having 3 unknowns in this particular equation. Maybe this portion I am write it as a coefficient AP, and this one alpha by this one I write as AE, and alpha by this if I write as AW, then I can write as some AP TPN plus 1 is equal to AE TW AE TN plus 1 plus AW TWN plus 1 plus some extra term, this TPN time level value. This is a known value because TPN is known and delta T is known. Something like a non-value we are having. So these are 3 unknowns in this equation, and corresponding to the discretization equation for at P. Similarly, I will have a discretization equation for at E, and that will be consisting of something on the right and something on the left. So like that, we are having a discretization equation for W at each and every point. So every point will have a discretization equation, and for this problem, we are having a discretization equation in which 3 unknowns are there, and like that, we are having for all the points. So we will have as many number of equations as the number of unknowns, the total number of unknowns. So for the total points, if I mark the total points as 0.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 like that. So in general, for any point, ith point, I may be having an AI for AI TIN plus 1 is equal to AI plus 1 TI plus 1, sorry, AI itself That is for the ith point. So bi, it will be bi ti plus 1 n plus 1 plus ci t I t I minus 1, that is on the left, and at n plus 1 there will be a di. So for any ith point we may have this kind of an equation. This is called a system of equations. If you write in matrix form, you will have a tridiagonal matrix form for this one. You'll have a tridiagonal matrix for this one, and okay, tridiagonal matrix is a simplest matrix form which you can have, and one sweep can remove the one diagonal, so that it becomes a forward elimination. Forward elimination and can give one diagonal, removal of one diagonal, and then a backward substitution can give a solution. That method is called a tridiagonal matrix algorithm. Tridiagonal matrix algorithm. I'm having a slide for that. So this is a kind of system of equations we are going to have in the case of a one-dimensional problem. So ai ti n plus 1 is equal to bi ti plus 1 n plus 1 plus c ti minus 1 n plus 1 plus di for I is equal to 2 to n. Because the point 1 and last okay, this maybe n plus 1. Last one is n. So last one we may have some kind of boundary conditions known. So we will have the equations for the interior points. The boundary, we will have some kind of a boundary condition. So we have the coefficients like just now I derived. So we'll have the coefficients. You can write. You have the coefficients for this particular problem. You have the coefficients. Coefficients ai is equal to, as per this one, ai is equal to some 1 by delta t plus 1 by delta t plus 1 by 2 delta x plus 1 by 2 delta x, or 1 by delta x, or bi is equal to alpha by delta x. Ci is also alpha by delta x, alpha by 2 delta x, like that. So this particular one I have shown here is for some other problems. Okay, the coefficient is little different, slightly different for this case. The coefficient you don't have to worry about. The right hand side term also is there, so that some area contribution is there. That's why this is different. So similarly, so there also we are having some coefficients. So it doesn't matter. So in the forward elimination, what we do is we write ti n plus 1. So actually this is our equation. In forward elimination, we want to eliminate this one. So we don't consider this. So forward eliminated equation will not have a back diagonal dependence. So but the coefficient will vary. So ti n plus 1, ti n plus 1. Ta n plus 1 will be written as some alpha ti plus 1 n plus 1 plus beta I. So by using this, we can write ti minus 1 n plus 1 as alpha I minus 1 ti n plus 1 beta I minus 1. We substitute this ti minus 1 n plus 1 in terms of alpha I minus 1 and beta I minus 1 in this here. Thereby we will be able to find out alpha and beta I. So these are some simple mathematical simplification. Will get the values of alpha i's and beta i's of the forward eliminated equation in terms of the coefficients ai, bi, ci, and alpha I minus 1. So we have to start from the beginning. And beginning we must have some alpha 1 and beta 1 based on boundary condition. Based on boundary conditions, to start with, we may have an alpha 1 based on the boundary condition, and then we solve for alpha 2 onwards to the alpha 2 beta 2 alpha 3 beta 3 onwards to alpha n beta n. We can go up to that, and that will remove the backward diagonal, and then the backward substitution will be able to provide that backward substitution by knowing the temperature of the last point, the temperature by forward elimination. Forward elimination, what happens is that we are having the matrix. There's a back diagonal, there's the forward diagonal. This diagonal elimination will lead to the forward diagonal remaining like that, and the forward diagonal will be remaining, but the end point will have will not have any dependency on the right side point, because this point will have a right side dependency, but the last point solution will be automatically obtained from the forward elimination. So once you have the last point temperature, that n+1 temperature, from there on also last point of the end I is equal to n temperature, then this n-1 you can find out, and subsequently the backward substitution will give you the temperature at all the points. So this is I will be sharing the slide so that you will have all the mathematical expressions with you and also there's a code for that. This is a case of temperature evaluation done by using this tridiagonal matrix algorithm. When you go to a two-dimensional problem, you will have some more extra terms, and thereby you have to find out the temperature gradient by in a similar manner like this. And whatever scheme, implicit scheme or explicit scheme, you will have the coefficients and the system of equations like this. And you have different methods like Gauss-Seidel iterative method, TDMA, and conjugate gradient method. And if I have some 5 minutes time, I can explain conjugate gradient method. Do I have time? Anybody from the organizer side? Can I?
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. And this is also actually in our 3D code, all the codes we use this conjugate gradient method, and this is particularly useful when this Laplace or Poisson kind of equations are solved. So normally for all Poisson solvers we use conjugate gradient method. This Poisson solver is required in heat conduction problems, and also sometime when you are trying to solve the flow problems, you will land up incompressible flow problems. You will come across with a Poisson's equation. Poisson's equation is something like a del squared some phi is equal to some function of the space, function of the point in space. So this is also done in a similar manner. So what we have is that we get a system of equation like Ax is equal to b. This kind of a system of equation we get when you are discretizing this Poisson equation. A Laplace equation is also actually what the illustration which I have given is writing. Even though I have not written in the matrix form, we are having some kind of system of equation written as Ax is equal to b, where A is a matrix, X is a vector of unknowns, B is something on the right hand side which is known. So something like this. Okay. Something Ax squared. If I say Ax squared, what is Ax squared? Derivative of Ax squared is 2Ax, right? 2Ax. So the Ax squared is because X squared I can write, because X is a scalar, I can write X. I am able to write X squared. But normally we have X in a vector form. So in a vector form, what we will be having a scalar, a matrix and vector is a scalar you can get by X transpose Ax. So if you look at the mathematics, you will see that the Ax is a vector, X transpose Ax is a dot product. This is a vector. Ax is a vector. This is X transpose is a vector. X transpose Ax is a dot product of X and Ax. So that way it becomes a scalar. So the Ax is equal to b is something X transpose Ax. If I take a differential of d by dx of X transpose Ax, so I know that d by dx of Ax squared is 2Ax, right? something like that. So this, if I want to remove the 2, what I have to do is half ax squared you take. So half ax squared you take, then it is ax. So this ax form I get, if I have something half ax squared, if I do by dx I get. So that way, when it is in the vector form, d by dx of x transpose ax, half also you have, the half also. So that is ax. And also this b is something d by dx of x transpose b. Because I have, suppose I have some bx is there, what is d by dx of bx is b. So that way. This x is equal to b, I can get by having some d by dx of where x is a vector minus x transpose b. Okay. So and what is this? If I take equal to 0, okay, d by dx of something. If I take d by dx of something, I take and equate to 0 means what is that I am doing when I am trying to find out d by dx of something and equating to 0, or I am trying to find out some x values at which this scalar function is becoming maximum or minimum. That is the first order condition. So I am taking something d by dx of something and equating to 0 means I am trying to find out a maximum or minimum of this scalar function, right? So there is that is a concept in conjugate gradient method. Suppose I am trying to solve x is equal to b. Okay, what is this d by dx of this? This is equal to x minus b. I am taking equal to 0. So solution of x b equal to 0 is equivalent to something maximizing or minimizing this scalar quantity half of x transpose x minus x transpose b. Suppose if I take pi is equal to, is a scalar which is half x transpose x minus x transpose b. And the first order condition for the maximization or minimization of pi is that leads to ax. That first order condition gives ax is equal to b. So ax is equal to b is as though equivalent to an extremization or the maximization or minimization of a scalar quantity. This is called a quadratic form. This is called a quadratic form, a minimization of the maximization or minimization of the quadratic form. And also a second order condition which I am not going to explain here. That is because this is by some property. This A matrix as a property that it is positive definite. So positive definite means it is having a convex nature. So that this will be a minimization. So that is the second order condition that says that the minimization of pi leads to. So instead of solving x is equal to b, we minimize a scalar function. This pi is equal to half x transpose x minus x transpose b. We minimize. So that will lead to minimization of a scalar quantity pi leads to the solution of x is equal to b. That is a concept of a conjugate gradient method. And A is a matrix of size, a large size, and x is the vector of that many number of components as that of the matrix. If A is n by n, x will be n cross 1 size. That is a vector of n rows and 1 column. B next, and B also will be n cross 1. And actually that idea of that vector, and physically that vector, because we are having the number of unknowns, we are going to have a large sized vector, but physically speaking we can think of a vector of size number of components 3. That is generally the any physical vector quantity used to be. But this is not the physical vector quantity. Mathematical vector quantities which can have any number of components. The physical vector, It has a maximum 3 components, 2 components. So suppose some vector we want to draw in a board or something like that. What do you take? You take something like x1, x2, only 2 components only. So any vector will have a components x1 and x2. So 2 components you can draw in a you can draw in a plane. So and in that case, if you have this pi, this pi is equal to, okay, and you go to one point which is which is x0, which has an x01 and x02, pair of values x01 and x02. You can evaluate this when a is not, b is not. You can evaluate the value of the pi at some x0, pi at x0, and that is pi naught, and that is pi naught, and that find out a pi naught, a value of pi at x0, and if you write that pi naught, and then you remove this, and pi naught equal to constant, that is the quadratic form is equal to pi naught. This is x1 and x2 varies, and pi naught curve if you draw, it will be having some kind of a curve, because in a two-dimensional plane the curve of constant value of pi equal to pi naught corresponding to the value of pi evaluated at x0 can be of this kind of a curve. So in conjugate gradient method, we start with some x0 and find out a pi naught, and then draw a curve. So a curve of a constant value of the quadratic form equal to pi naught. The quadratic form equal to pi naught curve, if you draw, it will be like this. It will be having a curve shape like this. And then you know, the gradient of pi is what is gradient of pi is ax minus, that is d pi by dx. D pi by dx is ax minus d. And if d pi by dx, if I evaluate at x0, I get ax0 minus b, and that will be mathematically it will be along the outward normal to this particular curve at x0. And now what I do is I take b minus ax0, as r0. So r0 will be opposite of that, r0. And any value of pi inside this curve will be a smaller value than pi 0. So any pi will be smaller than pi 0. If we go into interior of the domain, any value of pi will be smaller than pi. So this is a search method. So in which you go along the r0 direction, which is the gradient opposite to gradient b minus ax0 is taken as a search direction p0. You go along the search direction, and thereby we can come to a point where pi is a minimum. Pi is getting to a minimum value, right? So so for that you have to go along the r0 direction. A certain distance you go, and suppose somehow I know this is a point. This is a point of solution of and the solution x1 x2 is a solution. x1 x2 is the solution. This is a solution point x1 x2, and where pi will be having the lowest value. So corresponding to the solution x1 x2, the pi value of pi will be lowest. So what we do is we go to a certain distance, and it is somewhere here, and then you draw a come to a point here. Draw the next pi curve, the constant pi curve here, and then outward normal of that will be like that. Then if the search direction, if you go, you can easily come to this particular point. So we go to a certain distance alpha such that the outward these two directions are a 90 degree. Then the approximation is that there is a constraint that this search direction, previous search direction and new search direction at 90 degree, then we'll be easily able to come to this particular point. And that way, this alpha k you evaluate based on this 90 degree condition, you get this equation. So you go to from xk, you go to an xk plus 1 as some alpha xk plus alpha k pk. This is a search direction. This is a scalar distance we go along the along the pkth direction to get a new x value, and then the residue if we calculate, and that way you can come to the solution. Every time you look at what is rk plus 1, rk plus 1 will be the residue, new residue will be coming down, and we can do till a few number of iterations till that time. At that time, you can get the rk plus 1 to a very small value. There you can, when the rk plus 1 is a very small value, that xk plus 1 you can take it as a solution. So these are the solution algorithm that I'll be sharing. That you can try. I think so. We are having some code also. I'm having some code also. Maybe I don't know. I have kept it in this or not. But anyway, that is a kind of strategy you adopt for a conjugate gradient method, which is a steepest descent method in which some conjugate direction principle is also used. Thereby, the solution is made fast. So if you have any doubts, you can ask me. Anyway, I know that there were some interruptions in between. I don't know how much level I could explain the things to you. If you have any specific doubts, you can ask that. We can make it that kind of a discussion for a few minutes as something. Okay. Can anybody answer to my? Can anybody answer to me?
Participants, if you have any questions, please type in chat box or please just raise your hand. Then unmute your mic and ask the question.
Swarajano conducting. Swarajano conducting. Who is conducting?
Hello, sir.
Who is speaking? Swaraja or somebody else? Who is speaking?
Hello, sir.
Yeah, Swaraja. എനിക്ക് എന്താണെന്ന് അറിയത്തില്ല, കുറച്ചങ്ങ് ഫാസ്റ്റ് ആയിട്ടാണ് പോയത്. അപ്പൊ എത്രമാത്രം കവർ ചെയ്തു എന്ന് എനിക്കറിയത്തില്ല. സോ എനിബഡി
സ്ലൈഡ്സ് ഷെയർ ചെയ്താൽ മതി, സർ.
സ്ലൈഡ് ഷെയർ ചെയ്യാം. ഞാൻ സ്ലൈഡ് ഇത് കട്ടില്ല, ഇത് റൈറ്റിംഗ് ഉള്ള സ്ലൈഡും രണ്ട് സ്ലൈഡ് ഷെയർ ചെയ്യാം. ഈ റൈറ്റിംഗ് ഉള്ളതും റൈറ്റിംഗ് ഇല്ലാത്തതും ഷെയർ ചെയ്യാം. കുറച്ച് എക്സ്ട്രാ പോർഷൻസും ഉണ്ട് ഇതിനകത്ത്. ഞാൻ കുറച്ച് എക്സ്ട്രാ പോർഷൻസ് കട്ട് ചെയ്തിട്ടില്ല, അതും എടുക്കാം കേട്ടോ. അത് കൊടുക്കാം.
ഷെയർ ചെയ്താൽ മതി, സർ.
എന്തെങ്കിലും ഡൗട്ട് ഉണ്ടോ? സ്വരാജിൽ എന്തെങ്കിലും ഡൗട്ട് ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ചോദിക്കാം. Because that will make things clear to others.
Hello?
Nobody is asking me question.
ആരും ചാറ്റിലൊന്നും പറഞ്ഞിട്ടില്ല, സർ.
ഓക്കെ, നമുക്ക് നിർത്താവോ? അതോ എന്താ വേണം?
സർ, 1 minute.
ടൈം ഉണ്ടോ?
Thank you, Professor Anilal, for a unique presentation. So you have illustrated the finite volume discretization by illustrating a one-dimensional transient diffusion equation. Also, you have introduced that conjugate gradient method. It was very new to me as well as it will be very helpful to our participants also. Okay, thank you for accepting our invitation for this session, as well as delivering a nice session on finite volume method. Hope the participants will be benefiting from this and they can continue or pursue further on this. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks the organizer for inviting me to talk in this particular short-time training program. Particularly thanks to Professor Abubakar, who was shown from the beginning. He was interacting with me for arranging this talk, and thanks for the initiatives and for inviting me to this talk. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.